All right, so for today's episode, we're going to be discussing the article. I forgot what it's called.
It's
Something like on the
it's
importance or
basically
on the something about
on the
bullshit.
phenomenon of
It's just called
jobs.
bullshit jobs.
Yeah, it's part of the book called Bullshit Jobs, the preface and then part of the actual book.
But yeah, so basically just an article. The author, he makes the claim that there's certain jobs in our society that do not provide any value, and he sort of explores how exactly it would be possible for a capitalist society to have these jobs, since in a capitalist society every job is supposed to provide value. I'll also put the article in the description of the YouTube video. So one thing that is often brought up by the free economy model is the concept that the market will always be the arbitrator of real value. And that was something that he talked about a lot. And oftentimes that concept is extended to the concept of jobs, in the sense that the value of someone's job will be determined by the market need and the market equilibrium. So I just wanted to start off discussing that. Is this a possible thing to happen, or does this system inevitably lead to some flaws?
I think what's interesting is to start off actually what you just mentioned with about the free market is a section of the actual article. I'm going to quote him here. He's talking about almost the contradictions between about the free market and apparently what is idealistically supposed to happen and what in many cases can happen. And he says that, quote, up to a point, as we've seen, most workers would really appear to agree with the economic principle, at least when it comes to the tastes and proclivities of the general public. But when it comes to their own jobs, their experience often glaringly contradicts the idea that the market can always be trusted in such matters. After all, there's a market in the labor as well. If the market were always right, then somebody being paid $40,000 to play computer games and gossip with old friends on WhatsApp all day would have to accept that the service he provides for the company by playing computer games and gossiping was actually worth $40,000. It is clearly not. So markets can't always be right. And he goes on with talking about other types of things. But he's making the argument that based off of someone's labor alone doesn't necessarily determine, the value of the actual, labor in a free market, and how it's actually determined by many other different types of factors.
And then also a thing that was brought up is when we start having these discussions, oftentimes the definition of what is value comes up a lot. And he really took, he kind of addressed in the article the stance that economists take on value, which is sort of a rational stance. But then he also thought, which I thought was really interesting, was he pointed out how a lot of values that are prevalent in what economists think kind of trace back to almost religious ideas. Like, one thing he brought up a lot was the one value that we have is sort of hard work, or the idea that someone who works like 100 hours per week is somehow more valuable than someone else. And I don't know, this feels like a value that's sort of pushed on us but never really explained.
I mean, I would say, for the example, if you had, let's say, somebody, the society that itself, it promotes people who work, let's say, 100 hours a day. I'd say, I mean, I think you're hyperbolizing, but if we were to say, somebody's congratulating for working 100 hours a day, I think you could actually use that as an argument to argue that the argument that he's making is that the current society, right, you look at somebody that's working 100 hours a week, right, and instead of saying, hey, they might be a little bit exploited, they're working 100 hours a week. That seems pretty insane, considering, how even he mentions that Keynes predicted. And we can, as a society, we could shorten the work week, but we're not. not due to the consumerism, which even mentions that the standard reason that's given by people is that, oh, it's just because of consumerism or consumer products. But all those
I
jobs
have
aren't going to
returned.
producing iPhones or other consumer products. They're not doing that. So to me, that signals what he even says, quote, the ruling class has figured out that a happy and productive population with free time on their hands is a mortal danger. And it continues on. But I think it's healthy because when you look at it, and you have the statement, he's working for 100 hours, be proud. What they're really overlooking is they're working over 100 hours. It's a regime or an ideology that legitimizes somebody working for 100 hours for so long, so painfully, and legitimizing by saying it's somehow, quote, hard work, when in reality
Guys,
it
I
can
have
be
a
extremely
question though.
exploitative. Yeah, sure.
The question is, how can I'm sorry, I wasn't really like completely listening because I was trying to like calm my brother down. But did you guys define what exactly is considered to be a quote unquote bullshit job?
He says so in the article.
Yeah, I can read it out. He says specifically here. He says, okay, this is going to be kind of long because he kind of does a little bit of paragraph before this. I'll try to keep it
Please
short.
paraphrase it, Alan. I know you're good at that.
Good word to say.
Here, he says, rather than allowing a massive reduction of working hours to free the world's populations, we've seen the ballooning, not even so much of the service sector. So basically, he's saying that there's these massive sectors like financial services or telemarketing, corporate law, academic and health administration, human resources, whatever. And those are the jobs that are ballooning. And it says that the numbers don't reflect all those people who provide administrative, technical, or security support, right? They only exist because everyone else is spending so much of their time working in other jobs. That's what he calls bullshit jobs.
I see.
So they only exist because everybody else is spending so much time on their other jobs.
To give more jobs to people.
Yeah, just to give them something to do.
And one thing he really focuses on, no, but one thing he focuses on a lot is he sort of admits how broad it is to define a bullshit job. So he really focuses on people who they themselves believe their jobs are meaningless. And he cites one survey, I think, where 30% of people believe that their job brings no real meaning or value to the world.
Mm-hmm. So this kind of goes back to the question: do the means justify the results? Like, you could work all day, and you could have intentions of goodwill, but if the product is no good, or if your company or your job is not doing well, whatever you're doing is not good. Going back to the thing of hard work, like, you're working hard nonstop. You're working for 100 hours a week, and still the result product, or if we're not talking about the product, the result service, good, whatever it is not justifiable to the means. So then we're asking the theoretical question of, is our axiom of saying, well, hard work is a good value, is that false? Because people could work tremendously hard but not have the skill. So
I think that's what he gets at, though, in the entire point. Like, he's questioning exactly what you just said. Why do we have the axiom of hard work? But he goes in that specifically because his claim here, he says, quote, the answer clearly isn't economically. It's not for economic reasons that these jobs exist. It's moral and it's political. And that's why he even goes on to state later, he says, quote, if someone had designed a work regime perfectly suited to maintaining the power of finance capital, it's hard to see how he or she could have done a better job. Real productive workers are relentlessly squeezed and exploited. So in that sense, that's to him is a very good explanation for why there are just these random jobs that exist just because everybody else is doing something else. Just to
I have a question. So what if we talked about AI, right? So what if we create an algorithm or a system that examines each individual, creates a list and data about that individual and his success rate and his achievements?
You've never read The Giver, have you?
I have.
Well, then you should know why that's a bad idea.
No.
I mean,
and technically, we do have that in a sense of way, in a technical way of speaking, we do have that. For example, when we first made our Squire accounts, didn't ask us, or was it
Oh
our
yeah,
Sawyer
true.
accounts or something else?
It was
But like
like
it's
the
like
quiz we had to do, the career
yeah, and it's
aptitude
like
quiz.
yeah, and it's like, oh, what do you like? We took a bunch of quizzes and it gave us like a list of jobs that like, or a list of career paths that we can take
But
that
here's
we
the
would be
thing.
most successful or most suitable for us. Remember that?
Yeah, but I
Those
feel like
algorithms already exist.
If you don't go into that job, you can't work at all. And this restrictive, oppressive, authoritative
Yeah,
regime.
yeah, yeah, but that's like something else entirely.
like I don't think you're gonna be able to know what you want to do just based on like a quiz of what you're interested in, because what you're interested in doesn't exactly
No,
equate to what a job calls for.
that
Because like
quiz,
there's also
And many people can have many different attributes for that prove aptitude for many different jobs.
I
yeah,
remember
so I
that
don't think
quiz asked us for like our behavioral stuff. Like, do you like working with groups of people? Do
Yeah,
you like
behavior.
doing mathematical
But
stuff?
then in
Do
the
you
end,
like
like, what human was born to work in an office?
yeah, exactly.
Exactly. No one.
honestly, I feel like
Be an
office jobs
entrepreneur.
are the most useless.
Be an entrepreneur, bro. Just
I mean, at the end of the day, I think this is what we get at. Like, how no human was, meant to be born to work in a random like cubicle in an office. But the thing is that even like this is, I think, more. This is on a deeper level. The incentives and like even the way we look at jobs, right? What do we look at the most? Like even if we go like I go into physics, Satha goes into math or whatever. We at the end of the day, what do we look for, right? We look for whether our job is going to be profitable enough in the future when we get
Right.
it. Right?
You want to look for like, can you pay the bills and how meaningful is this
but you
job?
can
Exactly.
do that by being
Exactly.
a McDonald's waiter or something.
But then
Right?
that job is not really
There's no
that
waiters.
meaningful. Like
Not
the
waiter,
impact you
waiter.
make is not that big.
Right. That it goes back. That's why I think his claim, the author's claim about how it's political and it's what did he say? It's political
Moral.
and it's moral. Right. He says that because he's looking at it not just like who needs jobs or who doesn't need jobs. He was looking at fundamentally what is capitalism as a system looking for to reproduce itself and to grow bigger, and what types of jobs and what environment it wants to create for other individuals. Right. Either for the pursuit of profit and to incentivize certain behaviors over others. So the system will, for example, like for useless jobs, will try and find ways to create these jobs which are inherently meaningless, but it serves as a way to give people some, companies either to make more profit or more money or to expand, right? So to those individuals, they see themselves and look at themselves saying, "Well, my job is useless." Well, yeah, because your job only is useful to the people who need to expand the company, expand capital, expand, to keep growing. That's what the use is. It's not the job wasn't created for you to use your creativity and your human insight and to enjoy it. It was made for somebody to create more money and profit. That's what
One
the point
one
is.
thing I don't really understand is he kept talking about the inverse relationship between the benefit to others and the compensation that you get from a job. So if your job has a high benefit to others, generally you have a lower compensation from it. And what I don't understand is how do we get to this point where these basically useless jobs are getting so much money?
Because so just gonna bring like for example YouTubers. The reason why they're compensated so much is because they bring it. They get most of their revenue comes from ads. And yeah, what they do technically, like YouTubers, they just record a part of their lives or something. They make up like pranks and stuff. It's meaningless, completely meaningless. There's no point for
Or
there to be
I would
YouTubers.
argue like, okay, a YouTuber
But
isn't really a useless job because they're still impacting people. They're like bringing people
yeah,
entertainment and
True.
no,
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna
but I'm
say.
talking about
They
like
do
our
bring
universities have like diversity officers that make
Oh
like
yeah,
four
yeah.
hundred thousand dollars a year. Like, how does that even happen?
You know what I think? He states this in the article. I'm going to quote him here like quickly. He says, quote, so he says, again, an objective measure is hard to find, but one way to get a sense is to ask, what would happen were this entire class of people to simply disappear? Say what
YouTubers.
you like.
Nothing would happen if they
No.
disappear.
I know, not about YouTube. It says, say what you would like about nurses, garbage collectors, or mechanics. It's obvious that if they were to vanish in a puff of smoke, the results would be immediate and catastrophic. A
Okay,
world without
nurses are an
teachers.
entirely different matter. Nurses are the backbone of the healthcare system.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So that's
That's what
if
he said.
YouTubers, like if YouTube, there's a lot of useful things on
Yeah, dude, there's a
YouTube.
lot of honestly, YouTube has been revolutionizing education, literally.
Okay,
yeah,
but like 100 years ago, YouTube didn't exist, and we were still alive, weren't we?
But we were
Yeah,
stupid.
Yeah,
but
but
like
we don't.
education
It's
wasn't
not
as easily
useless. Just
accessible.
weren't.
because it didn't exist before doesn't mean that it's useless because it never
I'm just
existed
saying
and now
that
we
we
have
can.
it.
I'm just saying that we can function without it.
But does that mean that it's
Right,
useless?
but it doesn't mean
I
it's
don't think
useful.
I
We
think
can
inside-
function
He's not
without
saying
an
he's not saying
assembly
it's
line. We can
useless.
function without cars and planes, but does that make them useless?
I think Jay's just trying to point out that it's not useless, but
It's just there
you
for
can survive without
entertainment.
it.
Yeah, guys, I think we have to be careful about YouTubers. We have to be a little bit more.
And not just
Right.
YouTubers, gamers too. Okay, the only difference
Gamers.
between a gamer and a pro gamer is that a gamer does games in his mom's basement, while a pro gamer does so on a stage. That's
Uh-huh.
literally the only
Right,
difference.
but then this starts coming back to like, what does
The
a human
labor.
want and what does a
Yeah.
human need? Like scientifically, a human need is just you just need like a couple chemicals and shelter and stuff.
What the hell? That's not what you.
Okay,
Yeah, but
Pablo,
I think
so
that's ignoring
That's
the
your
mental
argument.
requirements
But
and needs. No, I think, guys, when we talk about YouTubers, you have to be more nuanced than this. YouTuber is, we can't think of a YouTuber as like a health professional or like a plumber or a CEO. A YouTuber, I think, is intrinsically different because let's say, like, you can't, YouTubers can have companies, but the YouTuber itself isn't like, a standard company with employees. It's different.
no,
It's
it's
different
just a
relationships.
person.
Yeah, exactly. On a specific digital platform. We can't, it's not like, it's like apples to oranges. I think we have to be, that's why we're having this argument right now where we're trying to compare YouTubers to other types of jobs. YouTuber is an extremely specific, extremely new type of job. That's very weird because it's not like you're an employee who does labor and gets a wage from
kind
people
of.
above them. Kind of, yeah. But again,
You're still working for YouTube because it's their platform you're working on. And if you're a big YouTuber, you still have people working under you. There's always that meme that YouTubers have when they're like not paying their editors enough. Like their editors are slaving away in the basement. See,
Right, but I
they're
think what's important here is what their actions are directly affecting themselves, and it would be hard to say a YouTuber is doing something that's not in their self-interest and it's in the interest of YouTube.
I think it could depend on the type of YouTuber, actually. If there are YouTubers who, for example, are there to promote certain corporations or companies, then maybe to some extent you could argue that's kind of a useless job because their only point is to promote the profit.
I've never seen a YouTuber like that.
PragerU.
PragerU, for example.
Okay, let's talk. Oh my god.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is basically, even if they didn't exist, hypothetically they could exist. I know that most YouTubers, though, you probably already know when they make videos like, "Hey, when I'm a YouTuber, like honestly, I get burned out, but I'm satisfied with my job. Like, I'm so thankful for being a YouTuber. I don't have to do like other types of labor. So many YouTubers there, at least early on, were just voluntarily doing YouTube, and then it just became a hobby of theirs, and then became a job, and they were happy about it.
Right.
So,
they don't think it's useless, so that's probably the most important thing. Is the distinction is they don't think it's useless.
Because it's self-fulfilling.
Haven't we already decided that happiness is like the axiomatic purpose, and so if the human is purposefully happy, then that's not useless, right?
So you're saying the axiom is that humans have, but like, okay, look, if someone's just happy all the time, then that brings up the paradox that if you don't have anything other than happiness, then what you have is not really happiness because you don't have anything to base it off of.
Well, then we go into definition of happiness, and that's just another philosophical question. But getting to a point is that if people are happy with their jobs, then I don't think we can call them useless, even though in this perspective they're useless because they're absurdly not sufficient or they're not useful for the society, for the human individual, for his own experience.
I think these people are unhappy with their jobs because they perceive them as useless. It's like a very specific thing. It's not just general unhappiness. They're unhappy because they perceive their job is
Right,
useless.
but I think their perceived unusefulness is because, and going back to what he said before, and what he thinks that it's political and that's moral, and stating how how he said about how the work regime is perfectly suited. I think that's what we have to get at when he talks about happiness, is that people, at least from what I understand, realize that the only reason their job exists, let's say for corporate HR. There was a really good movie that I watched recently where it's a day in the life of this one girl, and she works as an assistant for this boss, and her boss is very abusive. At the end of the day, she goes to this corporate, HR person to tell, to try and, tell her about this
Seems
abuse
great.
or whatever. The only reason that he's there, I think, is what he gets at is to hold the status quo ideology. It's to make sure that, let's say, the corporation itself doesn't fall apart, to make sure the corporation as a thing is still able to keep itself running. That's the only reason that their jobs exist, right? They could think about it, as corporate HR is, intrinsically helping people out
I
at the
keep
company.
thought you were talking about.
But they're in the interest of capital. Like capital is controlling them in a sense. I think that's what he was getting at. Is
Well,
that's their only purpose
I think Jay's trying
to
to
the
say something.
To
economic
expand
system.
capital.
To expand capital. That's their only, like, to them it's not. I mean, you're a worker. You believe that the work that you do is either useless or not. You have feelings about it. That's what he was getting at. Like,
And we're trapped in the system, I guess. Just continue to go and expand capital. We just create more jobs, and that
to some
allows us to
extent,
create more jobs.
yeah, because the system requires that it needs to keep itself expanding, so it'll
Yeah,
promote
true.
types of jobs that'll keep
Also fall down. Yep, that's right.
Because here's a quote I'll just give. He says, quote, so it says, we could easily all be putting in 20 or even 15-hour work week. Yet for some reason, we as a society have collectively decided it's better to have millions of human beings spending years of their lives pretending to type into spreadsheets or preparing mind maps for PR meetings than freeing them to knit sweaters, play with their dogs, start a garage band, whatever, etc., etc.
It's like The Office, because you could argue like half the cast in The Office has a bullshit job.
To be honest, every and all job is useless in my eye.
okay, let's not go there.
But yeah,
Well,
let's not go into there.
As an
Depends
anarchist,
on it depends on what you define as a useless job.
Anarcho-primitivist, guys. We're going Amprim.
Anarcho-primitivist.
Amprim. We're
Yep,
going.
indeed.
The Amprim, the only two jobs that are meaningful are hunting and gathering.
right. So I think it really is like, what do humans need, and what do humans want? And it's increasingly now it's very hard to ascertain what is a need and what is a want.
Well, when you create more products, when you create more capital, people's wants and needs, not needs, but people wants are going to change all the time. And so capitalism is just going to make this cycle more and more. It's going to make it faster. It's going to make it quicker because people will want more things, and they'll feed into the system. And so over time, it will be a necessity for people to be happy, or they'll be unhappy with the capital that they get.
Right, but you know what's interesting about that is that over the past, there was a really good video on YouTube, and it was talking about what they call like woke advertising. And what's been happening over the past 40 years is exactly that. Capitalism wants to produce as many wants as it possibly can for yourself, to be as much of a consumer and to buy as many products as much as possible.
Consumerism.
But what they found out is that over the past 40 years, when you look at like advertisements back in the 1960s, they look like pretty silly today. And then when you look at ones today, some advertisements are so ridiculous they have nothing to do with the product itself. Like they don't even know what to advertise to you anymore.
It's a psychological trap.
Right. But that's the thing. What they're realizing, it's not just that they're making advertisements to get you to want things. What people are realizing is that the advertisements are slowly, because people are so used to them in our daily lives, they're slowly losing their effectiveness. So they have to make advertisements more and more woke or ridiculous, or tie them to, like, have you guys seen that Gillette commercial of like how to be a better man?
Like
How to tie them to like progressive politics. They're a company, as if they care about, men's, people's rights or things in the law. They're just tying it to progressive politics to be able to make more money, because people will look at them better.
Capitalizing on the revolution.
On like just people's progressive sentiment to make more money, because people will think, oh, well, they're progressive, might as well buy from them. Like they're trying to do this to create as much profit as
Free market just makes it worse, right? Because once one company starts it, there are multiple companies just going for after that
Well, yeah,
project
I mean,
cycle.
it's more nuanced, but yeah, I mean, like when you're a company, your goal is to monopolize as much as possible, which is why I would argue when you have massive free markets, what eventually ends up happening, like what happened in the 19th century, and what we're trying again, but what's showing itself, is that companies will monopolize themselves. They're meant to expand and eat up
That's
every
the
other
point.
until you're left with either an oligopoly or a monopoly. So
Or
either a handful of
anarchy.
companies or one massive company, and that's what you're
Or
left with.
revolutionary anarchy.
I think it also comes back to what we were talking about before about can humanity survive without constant technological expansion? So the reason we can't stop working is because everyone believes we have to keep working to even survive in the first place.
Self-deception.
But not just self-perception, it's that Ashwin's right. The system almost in a sense forces you to work. If you don't work, you die. No one's going to protect you or care about you. In order to have
Whoa. What do you mean you die?
That
What do
is
you mean you
true.
die?
The
Just eat
government
food from
You
the
can't
tree.
cannot
provide
pay your
your, you
bills.
can't
there's no
provide for yourself.
If you work a 15-hour per week job, there's literally no way you can provide for yourself given the wages that you would get.
Exactly. So the system forces you to, let's say, for example, many people now are getting 2 or 3 jobs to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week because they have to either afford food for their kids, for their family, or whoever. A lot of parents starve to let their kids eat the food that they buy.
You could be a babysitter.
But that's not the same thing as saying we can go out of the floor. That's not a solution.
So then let's say a babysitter, we say that's a job that we can immediately see has a lot of value to everyone because it allows people to pursue their interests and not spend so much time on their kids.
Exactly.
But it's so poorly compensated compared to its value. You don't get paid that much.
But at least you survive, right? The hope if we can compensate for
But the
life
idea is we have
and
to
money,
start compensating people equal to how much value their job has.
no, equal to how much the job it produces happiness for others and for themselves, right?
Well,
That's what I
so
thought.
babysitting is produce a lot of happiness for others and for if you enjoy working with children, it produces lots of happiness for yourself, produces lots of happiness for the parents because they don't have to take care of their kids, but you still get paid like $10 an hour.
Who cares about the money? You're still enjoying your life, and the money that you get is good for survival.
Because
right?
that's why the society is broken right now. That's why the whole system is broken right now.
Because
that
prioritized
compensation is not equal to the value that is being provided.
I guess you're right.
I mean, for example, let's say, and Ashwin was correct. Let's say, for example, you can argue, let's say you're a CEO or you're in a very high managerial position of a company. You, on average, CEOs earn around 340 times as much as a regular worker or employee. Now, you could argue to a certain extent that the labor that a CEO does is at least needs somewhat more marginable ability or whatever than a regular worker does. But at the same time, does it justify them earning millions of dollars a year who make the, like, let's say, for example, CEOs, how do they make the majority of the money that they make? Do they get a salary? No.
They make
stock options. Exactly. They don't even fit on the same level as somebody who's part of the regular working class population, 99%, who get money by doing labor. He just gets money because he's in the position in the first place. That's his justification. So to me, that's almost completely unjustified. He gets millions of dollars a year by the majority of which he gets not by working, but by owning. That's where his money comes from. He just owns the company. He gains money by owning it, not from his labor. When you have people on the bottom who work 40, 50 hours a week, but only earn $30,000 a year, which is half of American workers, it makes no sense to me. It's so inefficient.
We have to say it is paper money though. Like it's money on paper. It's not really there. But I can see what you're saying. So
I'm just talking about
kind of
on a surface level. Like to me, that's insane. The most.
What if we stop always looking for money as the purpose and look for compensation in other ways, perhaps ways of
I don't think we live in such a world where if you don't have money and if you can't really support yourself by like getting food and getting water.
Like I'm talking about after like your survival needs. Like what if the compensation for your job is not
so basically
money, but something.
The money is basically it covers up all of your needs, but the reason why we look for good jobs is because not only do we want to cover for our needs, we also want to cover for our wants as well. That's the reason
but
why.
if we were to get rid of money, we would have to fundamentally change the nature of this society.
That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about
getting rid of
the
money. We're talking about
practicality of it. We're talking about we're not talking it's completely impractical in order to get
we
rid of
can't do
money,
that.
because if you do get rid of money, then it's gonna go back to the whole bartering system, because
Yeah, we can't do that.
all
Well,
throughout
I think
human history,
eventually,
everyone is going to want something better than something that they already have. So without money, that's not doable. It's gonna go back to the bartering system. So there's going to be some form of currency that will always
But my point,
right,
exist.
but I agree with you to the extent that in the society and the material conditions that we have now, yes, we can't get rid of money. I just believe that
Alan,
personally. What?
my point was not to get rid of the money or get completely destroy the system. My point was just the compensation. So like the compensation that we get is okay. You get certain amount of money. Some of that money goes to your apartment, food, and all your survival basic needs. But then the other money you look for is for other things, right? So what if you get compensated for the survival needs, and then the other rest of the compensation that's left? Maybe you get vacations off, or maybe you get time off with your family, maybe holidays, or maybe spend parties, whatever. We, instead of money, paper money, we compensate in other ways that you might use money, but you give it you don't give paper money,
Oh,
instead that you
okay,
give
no.
money
Like
back.
See, okay,
labor
so this
vouchers?
is
Like
like
what?
literally swindling people. So if
Kind
you
of,
start
yeah.
saying, I don't want to pay you, I just want to give you benefits, then why don't
Mhm.
you just pay me? It's the same thing. If it's the same thing, just pay me, right? No,
No,
it's
but
because you want to start swindling me out of money and giving me less than what I really deserve. Like, I don't want vacations. I don't want benefits. I don't want like free lunches and
no,
vacation. Just give me the money. I'll take the
I
but
vacation if I
no, but
want.
think
at the end, the
also,
money will be used for that, right? So it's
So
just
yeah,
just
but
give it up front.
psychologically,
What's the problem with just giving up front? Why is the person?
it's just psychologically making you more in
It's
some
making you
ways,
more obedient to the company. It's making you more
exactly. That's
their
what I was.
fucking
Yeah, yeah.
corporate slave.
but it's still making you happy in
But
some way,
Ashton,
right?
this is the Ashton. I honestly, or not Ashton, sorry, Savik. Savik, I honestly think that what you're saying is not necessarily wrong or bad. It's just that in the current material conditions, if somebody were to set up a kind of system like that, what Ashwin said would happen. It's just an easier way to become obedient to a company. It's like, so I know this is a fact. So, for example, back in the early days of industrial capitalism, you would have workers that would work for companies and that you would have to use like their own currency or like their own value for labor. But as a result, you could only pay for products that that company made. It's an easier way, like Ashwin said, to exploit you by making you more obedient and by giving you the illusion of a choice.
Basically, it would
Saying,
become a monopoly.
yeah, but they would
Yeah, you're
monopolize
monopolizing your
capital would
workers.
monopolize you because you would then have no option. You would have to take their X currency, but you could only use it on the things that they wanted you to use it on, which is
Yeah,
easier to
so
exploit you with.
that's have you guys ever read the book called The Circle?
No,
Yeah,
what's it
I
about?
just read it.
Yeah, that's
Couple.
it. Wait, okay. So there's a couple different like thing. Is it with that one person that is like she joins the company?
Right. Yeah. So she joins the company, and
Okay. Okay, so we know
yeah.
what we're
Wait,
talking
so what
about.
happens? I don't know. Can you like have a
Yeah.
summary?
So it's like this tech company it's basically turning into a monopoly, and they're super obsessed with closing the circle, which means like complete information, every single like everything is in the cloud. They start like by the end of the book they start making people walk around with cameras and recorders around them, so every part of your day is recorded and in the
Transparency.
crowd. Yeah,
This sounds like Watch Dogs 2.
right. But
Yeah.
basically, their company
No,
has
it's
like
not Watch
tons
Dogs
of
2.
perks. They have like tons of perks, and but the flip side is like when the main character starts trying, she still wants to like spend time with her family. She wants to get off campus. She starts getting like pressured, like why aren't you on the company campus? Why aren't you here? Why aren't you like participating?
And
And
then she becomes one of them.
And Capistan.
yeah,
Yes, and J-Reg and Capistan. Let's go, people.
Wait, am I still lagging?
No.
A little bit.
I said she becomes one of them.
Oh,
Oh.
Dylan, this is where we ask, can you own personal nukes?
Well, yeah, I feel like when you bring up all this tech and stuff, like everybody likes to
Hey guys,
say, okay,
I wouldn't be surprised if Elon Musk had a couple missiles here or there.
bro, but like everybody likes to make fun of like the ANCAPs, like, haha, you guys aren't doing anything. We're the only true ideologies. But
I
like
mean, I
who
think
the
ANCAPs are the
what's an
scariest with
ANCAP?
technology and stuff.
What's an
ANCAP
ANCAP?
is like anarcho-capitalism,
yeah,
where you have no government, but you just have a bunch of you
Isn't
don't
that
have a government.
libertarian?
Yeah,
It's the
basically libertarian, but like to the
extreme form of
extreme.
libertarianism. Yeah, libertarians just want small government interfering with the capitalist market, and caps completely want the regulation completely gone. But what's funny, what Dylan said, why people make fun of ANCAPs is because to me it's contradictory. Because as soon as if we could just Thanos snap the government out of existence, corporations, like how do you protect your wealth now? Okay, then McDonald's makes their own nation state to protect their own wealth. And yeah, whatever firm corporation that
I
centralizes
can
power.
literally go around the block and just like kill people, and like it wouldn't. Not that no concern. I'm not actually gonna do this. I'm just saying it's like the whole purge type of thing, you know?
Yeah. And then imagine the
Yeah.
exploitation coming from then wages. Oh well, since there's no laws against labor, you got to work 20 hours a day or like
Haven't we
Right.
already
It's like the
established this that
fallacy
we need
that
some type of? Haven't we already established this that we need some type of government? We don't have to argue. I think we can go back to the problem of like the jobs and how how a job needs to be categorized where not only do the people are satisfied but also it supplies to the economy, because I think we're kind of deviating from the
one thing
topic.
he said. Oh, one thing he said was super interesting. He was like, the best way to save the environment is just to have everyone stop working so much.
I agree.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you look at right now, a lot of office workers are just sitting at home doing their work. They're still they're still doing their jobs, I guess, but they're not producing as much emissions from just, an hour of sitting on the highway through traffic in the morning.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm interested to see in like a year whether the climate scientists will see if this had any effect on CO2 levels. I'm interested to see if that happens. Like they can detect it.
Probably, most likely.
I hope
but
so.
yeah, it just kind of shows that like some of our jobs, you can just stay at home and do them. It's useless to go into an office and then have to do them if you can just have a video meeting. Like technology, he also in the article cites that like yeah, people in like the 20th century thought that technology would get up to the point where we can work like 15 to 20 hours. I mean, I feel like you still have to maybe work a little longer, but you're still closer to your family if you're online. Like technology is at that point, and we're sort of seeing more directly
There is
how.
actually a couple. I think it's only one company that has announced it. It's Twitter, and they have announced that they may permanently move their jobs from an office environment to like being able to work from home. So like their jobs may be permanently at
That's
home.
cool.
Yeah,
So
When
yeah.
people do work for home, I feel like with a lot of these office jobs, a lot of the time you're finished. You finish your work in like 2 or 3 hours, but then you're just stuck there. They're like, "Oh, I want
Yeah,
you to stay here." So remote work would really help with
dude. In
reducing
Japan, it's
this.
even
Also,
worse.
apparently
oh, the Japan, yeah.
Oof,
the
yeah.
reason why they're doing this move is because apparently they've seen that the productivity has increased by 18% I think I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure it was 18%. I saw it on the news the other day, but it has increased by 18% ever since like the move from like remote working.
So like in Japan, basically, like um if your higher person, if your senpai is still there, and if
Yeah.
he
Can
makes you
you
work, you can't deny him. You have to work, even though your work is finished. Not this is not every corporation or firm, but like
You
I don't
have
know,
to wait.
maybe a stereotype, but you have to like stay there and work until like the senpai's like now you can go, and then you
can you
can
stop
work.
saying senpai?
I'm sorry.
But it's true though. I mean, you
And
can not really senpai, but like the people higher in the
higher,
company than
yeah.
you.
And like also another like people who work in like these I don't know like New York or California where the cost of living is higher, you have to get an apartment or a car and live in this crowded area just because your job is there and your family lives somewhere else. And the job that you're doing there, you could have done it easily on the like in the internet. You don't have to
Remote.
be there on the in the office, right? So this argument that some like these companies that are like in crowded areas that the cost of living is higher, you have to get a like a place and you have to like eat the food there. Like all this could be done online and could save so much money.
And I think this pandemic actually is sort of exposing everyone that has a job that doesn't do anything. Because I read something like 30% of jobs they're not even going to hire back. They're just going to keep them fired. You know?
Because they were useless in the first place.
Yeah, I guess this just made them figure out, oh, it's useless. Oh, we can just have people work from home anyways and not spend so much money, you know.
I'm pretty sure the author to the article realized after he got to the half point that his argument is basically like subjective and like you can't really get anywhere.
Yeah, it's very subjective, but he does still offer some solutions, so that's why I think it's worthwhile. And I think he points out something and gives it like legitimacy that a lot of people might feel, but might not want to discuss because they feel like, oh, I'm just stupid for thinking this or something.
Right, but I want to
question the system.
I just think that I think it is, again, like you said, notable to say that what the author's perspective was somewhat subjective, but at the same time, I don't think that should diminish anything of what he's saying in the first place, because there are many other types of ideologies or other types of political critiques that many incredibly intelligent people over the past 100 years have made substantiated, like structural critiques of either the political system or capitalism that come to very similar, the same conclusions that he came to. He's just taking another angle at it. He's just doing it from a different perspective.
Right.
It's not just simply him flailing his arms. Like there are studies and conclusions and analyses that come to the very similar conclusion that he has.
Corn dog.